Welcome, viewers. This is our next Zeitgeist meeting with the Jordan Kostelac and the Jimmy Austen, the two prop tech and property experts. We're here today to have a basic discussion around how does Fleamint plug into, the overall property ecosystem, prop tech, and be able to solve multiple problems. So before I start, I'm just going to go into a little bit about the latest updates. Sam Bankman-Fried has been arrested. He's now in custody of I believe, the Bahamas police. And at some point, he's going to be processed, and I guess he's going to be taken back to the US for various counts of fraud. So the market's kind of shuddering off the back of this. And now we're moving into a new world of probably further regulation and further analytics around overall looking at balance sheets, looking at how well capitalized businesses are, especially the cryptocurrency smart contracts and are now changing indefinitely. So the world is changing out there, guys. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm going to pass you over to our brand new advisor that's recently been announced, is Jordan Kostelac. Jordan, do you mind just introducing yourself and giving a little bit understanding of the viewers of how your Fleamint advisory role is working?
Yeah, so my name is Jordan Kostelac, as James mentioned. I've been working in the real estate sector for about 12 years. But before that, I was doing direct-to-consumer logistics for retailers, for a big retailer for about 10 years. So I've kind of been all over the map, but the sort of common thread of my career has been basically process engineering. So most recently, how does changing technological conditions help inform new ways of doing business in the real estate sector? And so it's kind of a complex way of saying, like, how do we change our game to match the technology? And the next big change that I see coming is the utility of Web3. So what James just talked about with Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, we're seeing a lot of the houses of cards coming down where it's just focused on liquidity and moving it around. The application of utility has so much potential. And so that's what I'm hoping to bring to the Fleamint team is let's find the utility and then let the liquidity come, not the other way around. And just sort of secondary to that, I actually own a couple of breweries here in Hong Kong. So I'm really excited about some of the partnerships we have in the F&B sector. And I advise two international arts festivals. So there's just a lot of convergence of let's explore, let's dig, and let's see where the utility finds us, not just ask for a bunch of money and see what happens. So that's what I hope to achieve with the Fleamint team. So far, so good.
Wow, absolutely amazing. And actually, Jordan, I didn't actually know some of those advisory roles and capacities that you have. So we will have a chat after this.
Over a cider, I hope.
Of course. Jimmy, could you introduce yourself and where Fleamint are plugging into the international property market and where crypto plays a pivotal role?
Yeah, thanks, James. First of all, Jordan, great to have you on the call. Jordan and I used to work together, so it's great to share this space with you, mate, and really looking forward to what you're saying. Yeah, thanks for the intro. My name's James Austen. My role at Fleamint is Chief Commercial Officer. Just to take a step back from that, like Jordan, I've spent quite a lot of time in property industry. I've been in the space for over 20 years now. I'm a chartered surveyor by trade. That all started in the UK. Since then, 15 years of that has been spent in Asia Pacific, working across a lot of different markets, a lot of different real estate verticals. But one thing led to another, and it was always tech that I was interested in and how tech was disrupting the beast of the institutional real estate sector, so to speak. I got super interested in this in probably 2016, 17. Jordan, you might agree with me, when sort of prop tech really started to, come into Asia and make its mark. And it was then I kind of took the jump, moved away from, working for big international real estate companies and started going into the world of startups to see if I could really kind of embrace this technology, understand it, and really help to make real estate more accessible. And that's my why, and I speak a lot about this today. How to make it more accessible to retail market and how to solve problems for clients. And it was very organic. James and I have known each other for some time, and we were always interested. James, as you know, has been in crypto for a very long time. I've been working in PropTech, FinTech probably for about 6 or 7 years. So, James and I came together probably about 9 months ago, and to really discuss and understand, especially from my side, what blockchain and NFTs the benefits of that they can do for real estate. So, Fleamint was born out of that, and obviously the huge amount of experience that James has been leading the charge on that. And one of my roles here at Fleamint is in charge of the real estate sector. So that's a sort of quick introduction. Jordan talked about liquidity and utility, which again are two words which are key to what we'll both talk about today. But I think really from a 40,000 foot view, we have to look at the real estate sector as and what tokenization can do on the whole. And this really is providing liquidity to investors in what is a very illiquid asset class. And it's super exciting. What we can do here. Our goals are very simple. We're looking to democratize real estate, like I said, make it more accessible to the retail market, and also solve big problems for our real estate clients. Look, we're looking at multiple ways to do this, which I'll talk about a bit later on, but whether that's fractionalizations of assets, leveraging metaverse, but essentially looking at the sales process or conveyancing process and seeing how we can expedite, save time and money for our stakeholders. So I'll just end my bit by, I think, probably to talk about our recent partnerships. Look, we've been moving very fast. Fleamint's only been going for 8 months or so. And really within that time, we've now secured on the real estate side 6 contracts, all with different use cases, which is even more exciting. It's not at all cookie cutter. First deals for us in terms of geography happened in Asia Pacific. So we've secured deals in Thailand and Dubai and Indonesia, specifically Indonesia and Bali, Lombok and Jakarta. And look, we're working across multiple asset classes. We're focusing a lot on residential at the moment, but we're working also with developers, asset owners, and brokerage houses to bring this technology to them and to help them solve a lot of problems in this sector. So I think as intro, that's probably enough from me. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. Absolutely amazing. Look, so today we're going to be discussing how NFTs plug into the property industry, the ecosystem. And Jordan, specifically to you, how are NFTs currently utilized in order to save time, money, and legal costs within your PropTech space?
Oh, the short answer is they're not, but that's, I think, part of what we're setting out to tackle, right? So what people, I think there's a couple of things that really jump out at me when we talk about NFTs. The first one is there's a huge aversion to NFTs at large because of, just sort of the way that the market really hit this top of the hype cycle and has come back down. But anyone who follows these hype cycle type of trends realizes that big drop off is always followed by a steady uptick because, whether you want to use, tech speak or you want to sort of reference Warren Buffett, when the tide goes out, we see who's got their shorts on, right? Like that's kind of like the tide's going out on NFTs when someone can just get on and program a few bits of art in 4 or 5 hours and then issue an NFT collection that's just associated to generative art, things that we, basically a set of tools that if you just follow step-by-step instructions, that's not necessarily value creation But where we're going to start to see more and more value creation is exactly the things that you touched on, James, is saving time on money and legal costs. In today's world, smart contracts are not legally binding. They're really not recognized anywhere in the world. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't start writing the language of those smart contracts and trying to connect that to real world interactions and to make them legally binding. And so that's, that's where it's going to start to take up. I think before we see that happen, what's going to be sort of the bridge of all of that is sets of standards being formed and different chains sort of being the custody of those standards. So when we talk about real estate as an asset class just at large, there are certain common bits of data where it's located, right? What the size of it is. There's quite a few things that can be standardized, and that single chain can hold that information in a standard form that's publicly available. And then there'll be sort of plugins to that chains or NFTs that actually help to manage that time and efficiency. So it's like, I guess to borrow from sort of corporate speak, it's sort of a boil the ocean challenge right now, or the phrase I like to use is the eat the elephant challenge, right? Like you don't know where to take the first bite. There's so much to do. I think, again, finding standardization and how that rests on, be it one chain or several chains, and then connecting those pieces and saying the NFT holds the relevant bits of data that connect those bits of standards. That's where it's going. And so, it's in the PropTech space, as we're having this conversation towards the end of 2022, the only place you've seen that is some fractional ownerships. Like there's a few really interesting ones in the US where you're seeing fraction tokenization of like small multifamily units and things like that, where it's allowing more retail investors to access real estate investing opportunities remotely. But that's not using NFT technology sort of to the fullest availability that it has. But it's not hard to sort of look ahead and see a deed can essentially exist as an NFT when the right conditions are then set. So it's an exciting time. We're not at a 0 point where there's certainly some uptick. And that's where I say, I think we're starting to get on the upswing of that part of the hype cycle.
Cool. Jimmy, is there anything that you'd like to add?
I think that was pretty thorough from Jordan, as expected. Look, yeah, it's a nascent space, and it's an elephant. The real estate market itself is a beast. We're at the tip of the iceberg with it for sure. But the underlying conversation here has to be around blockchain technology. It has to be around smart contracts and the education of adoption of them down the sales cycle. And look, we don't know when it's, how quickly it's going to happen. We don't know how effectively we can remove intermediaries, save cost and time at the moment. We know that we can do it. Working with different clients, especially developers with different structures in their portfolios, their businesses are set up, and in different ways. So it's we sit down with them and really understand their individual problems on a case-by-case basis to work out how we can structure and leverage blockchain to add value to them. I think as a use case, something quite interesting we did for a brokerage in Indonesia was we looked at the market in Indonesia. We saw that it's pretty convoluted. In terms of sales cycle, it takes a long time to get due diligence done. It takes a long time to get the trade across. And working with one of our partners here who had a very accomplished legal team behind them, we came up with some utility on this where we could actually offer the NFT with the due diligence attached. So the due diligence process here, just to be clear, it can take anywhere between sort of up to 4 months, maybe a bit longer, before you put down your initial, let's say 20% deposit. By getting this due diligence done first, working with the notaries and the legal team here, and actually offering that due diligence attached to the NFT in the metadata, we believe that, on certain properties, not all, depending freehold, leasehold, that we can save anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks on the sales process. So, we're starting to build those kind of use cases. As we reach out and work with different parties. So I think that's quite a good example of how we're saving time with NFTs specifically off blockchain.
Fantastic. Cool. No, brilliant. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Okay, guys. So I guess, Jordan, how have NFTs been traditionally used prior to the digital certificate use case that we've just kind of gone through, right? Through saving time and money and legal costs. How's for the viewers out there that have never really understood NFTs, they don't really understand what they kind of do. How have they been used? How have NFTs been used prior to the digital certificate use case that we just mentioned?
So I think, I was very reductive in and for illustrative purposes before, saying, oh, somebody just gets on, they make some generative art and they throw it out to the world and hope to make a few bucks. And that happens all the time. But there are some really great examples of where this has utility that makes sense to people. So one of the applications I use personally is an application called Step N. And what Step N is you buy a NFT sneaker, and by having that sneaker in your collection, it allows you to play a game on your phone. The game being that when you walk, the GPS tracks your movement and the step counter tracks your steps, and you actually earn their in-game currency by actually walking in the physical world. And so this is a really interesting case where here's a digital asset that you have to opt into the system, you have to buy into the system, and then you can earn back from that. Think of it more this way. Imagine gym memberships of the future aren't being, I'm going to sign up for 24 months, I'm going to go for 7 sessions, and then not make it back to the gym again. We've all been through that cycle of New Year comes, we sign up, and we have literally just thrown our money into a black hole. And I did it for years. And you know what? The Step-In is both a great and terrible example because it hit this inflationary cycle. It hasn't quite hit a death spiral. So we could talk about things like Axie Infinity and other applications that do similar types of mechanics. But by having these digital assets, I'm able to participate. And so instead of that gym membership being $2,400 or 2,400 months worth of dues lost, you're depreciating it back based on your usage. And so there's some really interesting use cases there where it's like, hey, how much, if I put in for this, can I incentivize my own behavior? So what do I mean by that? Well, having Step In as a digital asset and having a sunk cost in my head means I have gotten in the habit since signing up for that in March of this year of getting off the bus stop. Like I'll get off one stop earlier on the train here in Hong Kong and walk home. I'm like, yeah, I got 20 minutes. Even better, when I'm not filming something, if I'm just on one of those conference calls that we've all been on, right? Like I get on the call, Jordan's on the call, and like an hour later, like, thanks everyone. That's my whole contribution. And I need to listen, but I don't need to actively participate. I go for a walk and I turn on Step-In and I earn a little bit of cash, or I earn the in-game currency that I then put back and invest in leveling up my shoe and things like that. So there are some really cool use cases beyond the ones that we reduce it to. And we should never look at sort of the lowest effort version of anything to be an example of all it's capable of. If all we're saying is like, oh, pictures of monkeys, we're not digging deep enough. And I think that's one of the exciting things we're doing as a team with Fleamint is we're literally getting our hands dirty, exploring those particular things. or a feet. I guess I'm getting my feet dirty in this case, right?
Yeah, of course. I think it's your entire body. When you're in Fleamint, you jump right in.
Yeah. Not the hair,
So,
not the hair, but otherwise, yeah.
well, there's a lot of hair, but it's just extremely small, but no one can
That's
see
right.
it.
Yeah,
So,
fractional
yeah.
ownership of my scalp. Yeah.
So Jimmy, like, I mean, the normal JPEG play then, I guess that's not really what Fleamint does. So what are we mainly concentrating on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that NFTs have gone through or going through a massive identity crisis, so to speak. The millions of dollars which were created in revenue in 2020 and 21, which we're referring to from digital art and pictures of monkey. That's something we at Fleamint believes in the past. That's not us. That's not our direction. Not to say there won't be some key collectibles on the platform, but it won't be. The platform. Our platform is definitely geared towards using NFTs and to leverage blockchain to trade real world assets from real world businesses. So that's essentially where we're going with it. And look, it's a very wide net for us to get into. It's the pie is huge. What we've decided on for a clear investment strategy is to focus on property, art, and the beverage industry in terms of whiskies and wine. Look, we've done that because I think, as everyone knows, there's already been some adoption of NFT technology into this space. We see it as kind of low-hanging fruit from an educational standpoint of getting new business onto the platform. So what you can see as our version one of our platform comes to launch in Q1 next year is that in terms of the hard assets on the platform, those three verticals will be represented very well. Look, we are a marketplace, so we will be pushing towards mass adoption, and this will mean us venturing into other categories as well. We're already talking to a lot of precious metal companies. There's a huge appetite there to how we can sell gold, for example, on the platform, and use NFTs and smart contracts to trade that in a super safe and secure way. The authentication and verification tech around that is obviously key to our clients, and they're very excited about that. As we move forward, I think I just think it's key to always understand that the underlying technology and what we're doing is blockchain tech for this, and a lot of the businesses in Web 2, so to speak, are they're pretty scared of this space, right? They're scared of the crypto market. They see the headlines. They don't really understand NFTs. They associate NFTs with the legacy stuff that we just discussed. So it's really our job, and we take very seriously at Fleamint is the educational side of this business, and educating everyone in the retail market in Web 2 and all the businesses in Web 2, and essentially holding their hand and bringing them into Web 3. We've got advisory teams, we've got strategic teams to get these guys set up, and our goal is very, very clear. It's we just want to show them a very easy and clear path to revenue, which they can create from Web 3 as well. So it's there's a lot happening. We have a focus, but we're really excited to show you some of the products we're going to be bringing onto the platform in 2023.
Amazing, absolutely fantastic. So Jordan, what do you think the current challenges and barriers are to entry with the global residential real estate industry?
Well, so let me start by giving a bit of background about Jimmy and I working together, because the nature. So when we work together at the same company, it's a big multinational property firm, and while our individual relationship was not adversarial, the parts of the business we were sort of inherently adversarial. So he used the term chartered surveyor, but to the uninitiated, that's the term you might know as broker, right? But from my side of trying to be a disruptor in the business, I made the mistake very early on of thinking that means middleman, right? Or, he uses the term intermediaries. What I learned over the course of time is brokers perform a very unique set of tasks, and the job of technology is not to eliminate them. So we love to use phrases like cut out the middleman, and that makes intuitive sense, but it's not actually the right thing. Cutting out the middleman means severing a relationship, because ultimately great brokers manage great relationships with their clients. No technology unravels that, right? The job of good technology, and again, it took me years to learn this in my current role, is to reduce or eliminate the tedious aspects of that job. So is it to get rid of the intermediary, or is it to streamline the tedious aspects of it? And my answer, of which I'm very certain, and it's a hill I'm willing to die on, is it's about getting rid of the tedious aspects. And that's what's so exciting about what can happen when these technologies are unleashed, when contracts can be initiated and completed, as Jimmy said, so much faster than they've ever been able to, because even in the same time zone, you have lag of days, because it's like, okay, here now it's sitting in this email box, it's going through this system, it's going through that. Blockchain technologies and NFTs being inherently non-fungible are going to allow for streamlining of those processes. And then it allows for people who manage very high value relationships to do more of that. And it doesn't necessarily mean all of a sudden a broker has more time to, get more deals, although hopefully that's an outcome for them. But it means they get to pay more attention to the relationship and less attention to 500 spreadsheets that don't talk to each other, right? Now you have a set of data that can really talk to different sets of data in real time. And so the reason I want to set the stage about that a little bit to answer this question is very much to the point that Jimmy just said about Web 2. A lot of Web 2 incumbents are sort of scared of the space. There's a similar relationship in that sort of adversarial nature of the way that our different functions of the business work together. Is we're coming and saying we're going to break the system, but the way that we tackle that problem is saying we're going to remove you from the equation. And that, I think, is really the key to breaking down the barriers to entry. Is, one of the things I advise a lot of my technology friends about is explain the outcome, explain what this technology is going to do before you ever mention blockchain, before you ever mention NFT, and before you ever mention cryptocurrency. Because as you mentioned at the top of the conversation, those are very lightning rod types of issues for good reason. I mean, we're talking about whether, what is at least being characterized right now as a $10 billion fraud. And the time will tell on that. I'm not going to make an opinion as we have this conversation now, but, it's got the industry at large has a big black eye right now. So what we need to be doing is we're in this very high pressure build cycle, is focusing on the outcomes, not on what the technology does. And the big outcome here, bringing this all full circle, is if we can show the incumbents in whether it's residential or any other asset class within real estate, if we can show them, here's the outcomes, and get them on board, then you kind of sneak in, oh, this is NFTs that are handling this. You're winning the audience. I think we're sort of, the tip of our spear as technologists has been the wrong way to attack this issue. We're getting better at it. And that's why, collaborations, we're bringing those polar opposite sides of what, the way that Jimmy and I used to work together, bringing it back together to solve these problems in tandem. That's what's exciting. But the big barrier has been that, like, the terms we rely on in the blockchain space, things like disintermediation, or even if we're being very reductive, cut out the middleman, is not the right way to go about it. Let me get rid of the tedious aspects of your work. That wins hearts and minds. That gets adoption. And it also, I'd say the other big barrier is, I really love something Jimmy said early on, accessibility. So much of the blockchain and even really just technology conversation at large relies so much on these sort of mystical or arcane terms. And it's a sort of crutch for the world of consulting that we like to use these terms and go, oh, look at how, smart I am and how much I know this sort of. If we can't explain it, like if we've had a conversation separately, I said, if I can't explain it to my mom, I don't understand it yet, or I'm not good enough at it yet. So I practice until she gets it. And that needs to be the attitude we have at large. Quit hiding behind these sort of mystical terms and say, this is what we're going to do. This is how it helps you. And you'll get more people on board. And instead, taking the other approach, we create our own barrier because it means people get intimidated and feel like they have to go back behind their own curtain and educate themselves on something complicated. Sorry, it's a long answer, but I think it's a good story.
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. Jimmy, what do you have to add to Jordan's amazing answer?
Can't say it better than that, can you? Pretty glad you're on the advisory board, mate.
He's glad I said that he had reason not to like me, I think is the main point. Because I was a huge pain in the ass, but for good reason, I hope.
Absolutely. No, I think, look, I think it's absolutely spot on, isn't it? It's not you against us. That's not how we should be positioning it. For intermediaries, we're not trying to get rid of them. We're trying to give them the tools to do their job better. Yeah. Only by doing that and educating them with this technology will we actually get to where we want to. And I've mentioned this a lot, but it is around mass adoption. Our platform itself will be a turnkey solution. Everyone from my grandmother down to someone who's in the most nascent space around Web3 will be able to use this platform. Today it is still quite challenging to go onto an NFT marketplace and mint and buy and sell an NFT. You need some understanding around it. We have to solve that problem, right? Talking more, I guess, specifically to challenges in the residential space. This sort of goes back to me starting out in PropTech in 2016, 17, like hitting a lot of brick walls where I was working with different technologies to drive new revenue streams to physical assets or add to existing revenue streams. And it was very hard initially in those days from a business development point to sell this tech or to get, let's say your traditional real estate developers or clients to actually take this on. A lot of that has changed now. I would say that one of the challenges for real estate sector is that I think, and this is an arguable point, but out of all the sectors, it's one that tech has found particularly hard to disrupt, or at least tech has found it very difficult to impact revenue. I think we are getting there. There's been a lot of prop tech which has kind of tried and failed in this space over time. I'm confident, much more confident around how the impacts of smart contracts and what blockchain can do in this space, because it can affect all parties and intermediaries and benefit everyone. Moving on from that, I think it's another challenge, especially in residential space, would be ticket size. It's the real estate sector in terms of investing into from retail market. There's always been a barrier of entry of having to save up money in deposits. Scrimp and save to get all your coffers together to buy your first house, or to have any asset-backed investment. So, that's always been something which I've been cognizant of. And I've been working with James sort of night and day in the last 8 months to work out, how Fleamint can make asset-backed investments more accessible to retail market. And look, I'll give you a few examples of what we've come up with. By leveraging our, metaverse play, which will come to fruition, I think it's on our timeline, James, probably mid 2023. We're actually going to be digitally twinning physical assets into the metaverse, that we will be able to fractionalize those digital assets and trade them on the marketplace. Depending on what the assets and the portfolio is backed on those properties, there will be different returns that can be given back to retail punters. So the bite size on that will be a lot smaller. You could be buying, depending on what the client wants, fractions of property for anything between $5, $10, $20,000, rather than having to put together hundreds of thousands of dollars for deposits. So that's something we're working on, and very excited to offer. I think another thing to mention is how we're working with DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. This has been beneficial both for our real estate clients, developers, and also for retail market. We've got a couple of use cases. We've got a client in the UK who we're setting up a DAO for, to mirror their physical entity, to help them to raise capital in a very efficient way, for property development of one of their portfolios in the northeast of England. We've set up this digital entity. We're building a community within it, and issuing governance tokens to support that project. The DAO will be furnished with all of the information that you would do in real life. It will be audited, and all of the development information and all information around what that developer is doing in the real world in terms of investment will be furnished in the DAO, and there'll be voting rights given. So what this allows also to do is us to raise capital for these clients, but it also allows us to create what we've called these NFT debt chips. And the NFT debt chips, again, are kind of bite-size portions where people from crypto market holding crypto can off-ramp crypto and through our marketplace and buy these NFT debt chips at a much smaller ticket size than they would have to in the real world, so to speak. And then have two main benefits here is one, having access to global crypto market, those crypto holders being, like I said, having the opportunity to actually invest in physical assets using crypto, which has been very scarce, or maybe even never been done before. And then for our clients, it's about us being able to raise capital for them through this structure, through the DAO, in a super efficient way that they don't have to go for institutional money. So that sort of scenario, a bit long-winded, apologies, but it really talks to how we're offering product to our retail clients through the marketplace, so they can actually invest in property in a much smaller capacity, but still enjoy the same yields that the residential or the broader real estate market has to offer. So yeah, between fractionalization, digitally twinning, and metaverse and DAO structure, we're hopefully going to be moving very close towards solving some big challenges for retail market as how they can invest in the property world.
Fantastic. So Jimmy, what's Fleamint doing with this developing technology in the overall ecosystem? Like how are we, developing the technology in order to assist with property developers, buyers, purchasers, how are we enriching the entire ecosystem?
So first of all, we can offer free minting for especially during POC to get people onto the platform. We've built in sort of stage one of our metaverse development, we built a Fleamint shopping center using Unreal 5 photorealism, where we're actually going to be digitally twinning all of the assets from our marketplace into that space, where you can go and buy and sell them with your avatar, use authentication tech, get those actual physical assets delivered to your door. So it's going to be a very interesting, super inclusive space, and kind of our first step into the metaverse, which will be, like I said, through our Fleamint Mall. We're looking at broad spectrum. We're looking at Web 2 companies. We're looking at loyalty programs, how we can work NFTs into loyalty programs, how we can increase engagement and reach, and just add utility into that NFT that you wouldn't have access to in the real world. Again, going back to how we're working with Web 2 businesses, I mean, I named a few use cases, but broader spectrum. We've done deals with recruitment companies, wineries, games, lots of different property companies, and just to really show them, as we migrate them from Web 2 into Web 3, how we can show them significant revenue from this space.
Fantastic. So, Jordan, how do you feel that obviously the NFT play is going to impact the PropTech market as a whole?
Well, I think sort of touching back on something that Jimmy said is that a lot of PropTech has tried and failed, but it's, I think, what I would call that a dosage challenge. Is a lot of PropTech products that exist today, they're going after such big ticket clients, and there's a bit of a misconception from startups that because this is a big property developer, this is a big property services firm, that means one big checkbook, right? And like, oh, a decision's made from on high and this is how it goes, when really it usually means smaller budgets, compartmentalized differently, and way more complex decision making. And so where I think it's still, I keep coming back to the same point, but this is really having this conversation as we're getting ready to go into 2023 and the year of the rabbit for those of us in Asia. Like this is truly a build economy. And so experimentation is really, I think, the key to what's going on with Fleamint and really just this space at large. Finding out what works in sort of lower stakes conditions and then scaling that up is what the property industry is really so desperate for. So when I say that dosage issue, it's like, oh, we want to go, like, we want these huge contracts, we're going to go right at it. But that, like, when you try to create or enter as a startup, try to enter that kind of relationship, what you forget is you're passing a lot of risk over to that developer or to that property services firm because they're getting into these big commitments without knowing the efficacy. And that's why a lot of these things don't happen. So demonstrating good applicable use cases and letting them see this is necessary because, like, especially in Asia, a lot of the big property developers they didn't start as property developers. Some of them were centuries old at this point. And the property arm is part of a much larger conglomerate. And that is, when you think of how we as individuals diversify our own investments, these conglomerates, that's the stable asset class, right? Like real estate in Asia is historically sort of just linear growth and almost never regression. And so you're asking people whose job it is to maintain linear growth to be the stable asset class in the portfolio of a larger conglomerate to act much more risk on. And it's just not their nature. Like why, like, there's no urgency to adopt tech when commercially your business is doing its job. So it's often mischaracterized as this sort of like psychological aversion to adopting tech when it's like, no, it's just not. Like, why do I need it? Like, why do you guys, we're all in Asia, you go to some restaurants and they use, you can pay with digital payments, but they add up your bill using an abacus, right? Like, and why did they not even buy like a $10 calculator? Because this works just fine. Like, this is not broken. We can't ignore that at a sort of industrial and systemic level. Yeah, they have large workforces and yeah, they could save money, but that's still speculative when this is a linearly profitable and stable business. So the real mission for Fleamint and anyone in this space is for us to show, hey, again, show the outcomes. Don't throw a bunch of technology and speculation at them. Here's how it works. Do you want to try this on a larger scale? And understand that it only is enticing if it's as risk averse as their asset class is supposed to be within a larger organization. And that's I think that's really been the big challenge of prop tech adoption industry wide, is that the attack surface, if we're going to use sort of tech terms, the attack surface, we go about it, we hit it from the wrong direction. And it needs to be a little more ground up and demonstrable than it's been so far.
Wow, super insightful, right? So, talking about that then, Jordan, how do you feel that, NFTs can improve security and transparency within the industry? And do you feel that transparency is even what the industry kind of wants and needs? Because NFTs will provide obviously security and transparency, but is it even how we should even be approaching the question? Like how does that improve?
You hit a really important distinction there. Want versus needs. Do I think transparency is what any industry wants? Probably not. It's like part of what allows any organization or any sort of industry to extract extra value is to go behind the curtain, right? Like there's a reason 3-card money is played with cups, right? You got to hide, you got to move fast, and smoke and mirrors, all this stuff. Transparency means that even systems of weights and measures going back to like the 13th century, right? Like why do we have a baker's dozen? It was so that they could handle the overflow of how one baker versus the other weighed things. Like, and when you look back at things like that, you think like, oh yeah, transparency benefits the wider market. And I think we all have to be very careful in these conversations to not accuse incumbents of sort of acting maliciously when they try to preserve the opacity of their industries. It is a natural state to want to preserve what is benefiting you. Like we would all do that in the same situation. If we want to act like we're better, we shouldn't be on podcasts. We should be out doing charity work, right? Like we do have to draw a distinction between commercial interest. So do they want transparency? No. Will they need transparency? Yes. There will be a sort of arms race around being able to show transparency. And I think where it's going to start, at least where I hope it starts, is around the ESG conversation. So just for anyone who may not know in the audience, ESG, we're talking about environmental sustainability and governance is typically what those three mean, but we're really talking about the impact of climate change on our bigger world. When we drill that into the real estate, how does the built environment impact the natural environment? And so right now, nothing goes more behind the curtain than those conversations. And it really makes people skeptical of the whole conversation because it seems to be sort of this consulting mysticism and arcana, like I talked about earlier. Like, we're going to go do this magic and give you all these numbers. And when you don't show your work, people don't know that, like, whether or not if it's not self-evident, then how do we know anything? And so where I think the sort of pressure for the most transparency is going to come first is a set of standards around ESG and a demonstration of those standards. So to give you a real example from the built world, things like construction projects showing their impact, showing even how, like, modular construction is heralded as being a much more sort of sustainable building practice than traditional all on-site construction. But we don't know that that's truly more sustainable because it goes behind the curtain of production versus the consumption side of the supply chain. And so by having all of the supply chain visible on a public ledger, the blockchain, will actually be able to attribute where is carbon being embodied, where is energy being overconsumed, how have delays impacted the rest of the supply chain. I'm actually advising a company in Singapore called Geometra that helps to measure that thing, and that gets into another big issue, just sort of writ large for the industry, what I like to call the IO paradox. So IO being input output in this case. So much of PropTech right now as it exists is output. There's so many software, especially SaaS platforms, that are great at visualizing data. I would say 99.95% of the PropTech products I've seen do some form of data visualization, the output side. The paradox is that there's only about 0.05% that are getting the input side. So we're good at making it look pretty, but we're not good at actually getting the data that's meaningful and measurable to do that. And that's where blockchain, you can start with each participant in a supply chain, any supply chain, construction, operations, any of them. And all those little smaller pockets of data sort of agglomerate into a much larger set of data that now we can start to figure out and solve these problems in a more responsive way. And so that's, I think, the industry doesn't want transparency. The industry is going to need transparency. And maybe if there's a silver lining in some of the challenges in the crypto space right now is that the more transparency, the more issues come up, the more urgent transparency becomes. And that is ultimately beneficial to everybody, I think. Like, I think that transparency still benefits the larger group of consumers. And to what Jimmy was saying earlier, it allows for more participants in asset classes that were previously unavailable to them. So I'm all for more transparency. And I think great technologies like blockchain, NFTs are really going to speed that up.
Absolutely amazing. Jimmy, I mean, how are we at Fleamint improving security and transparency in the overall industry?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, will NFTs improve security and transparency? I mean, it's we need use cases. Time will tell as this tech develops, and I think what we're doing with Fleamint over the next year or so, we will actually be able to pull together some demonstrable data around how we're actually doing this. Right now it is super new. The questions are still out there. The idea of the way it's set up with immutable ledgers on blockchain is that, yes, this is all gearing towards security and transparency, but more use cases need to be published and talked about to bring in a wider audience to trust this. Look, where we need to be positioned as Fleamint is to be the lead on this, right? We as a crypto company dealing with Web2 businesses, bringing them into Web3, the key for us is transparency, is security. These are the pillars that we are driving forward and educating and through this adoption. This is paramount for us. We start by saying, if it's not your wallet, it's not your crypto. Okay, so Fleamint have partnered with the decentralized exchange. We're not custodians over our wallets. We don't hold private keys. All of this is absolutely paramount, especially as what's in the news today, and the headlines that people who have never even heard about cryptos, or crypto exchanges before. This is their first information feed of what they're reading in the press over the last 4 weeks, and will be reading in the next 4 weeks and maybe longer. So it's essential to us that we have set up our platform in this way to be arm's length from all of these retail wallets, and to be very public and transparent around that is super key for us. And we believe that this is the basis. This is the foundation for all successful crypto projects moving forward. Must have the structure that we put in place to gain the client's trust.
Yeah, totally agree, Jimmy. Absolutely. So Jordan, I guess moving into the final question, because we've been talking a lot around property and how PropTech is going to integrate with Web3. So do you feel that PropTech has really been taking advantage of blockchain technology, or you feel currently it's being underutilized?
I'll zoom even further out from PropTech. It's just underutilized writ large. As a technology, what I said before, so much of the space has been dominated by liquidity ahead of utility. When you I have to admit, I entered the sort of blockchain and crypto world quite late. And, what really annoyed me was always I would, if you're on crypto Twitter, and it's like, oh, it's all about the community. It's all about the community. And then you watch just one dip on a particular coin and everyone's like out for blood with each other, right? So there's this whole idea of community. All it takes is you wake up and then there's a bad day and then everyone's just at odds with each other. The industry is coalesced around the wrong points, but that's because ultimately this is hard. Computation is hard. Development of good technology with utility is much harder than creating a Discord channel and cheerleading. And that's what when you guys asked me to be a part of this team, it's one of the things I was looking out for. Are we really putting utility ahead of the failures of crypto? Yes, any fraud, some of the frauds that have been out there, the high profile ones, those are obviously problematic and those are bad actors. But I think what we all need to be thinking about moving forward is what I said before. If you can't show how it works, and we talk about transparency, but part of transparency is showing your work and showing how it works. If you can't show how something works, then you don't know, or at least my assumption is going to be that you don't know. So I think it's just underutilized everywhere. I have to tell you, I've been in my previous capacities, I've been talking about the potential of blockchain, and I'll admit here publicly, I didn't really understand it until I started getting my hands dirty with it. Now I can think of a million use cases, but thinking of them is not the same as doing them. And so I'm excited about what we're building, what I'm building on my own, and what can be built property or any other industry. I think that that community conversation, that whole idea of community, if you look at the crypto conversation space, especially crypto Twitter, now the sort of cheerleader language has become, it's time to build. But it's always people who aren't building that are rah-rahing about it's time to build. Building is hard. Talking about building is easy. And so there's a lot to be built. And what I am seeing is a lot of people who, are leaving high-profile tech companies and stuff to get in and truly build in this space. And so not just in prop tech, all commerce globally has an opportunity. And in earnest, when layouts started happening in some of the biggest tech companies in the world a few months ago, I think that's when the build economy really started. And again, it's not the people talking about it because they're too busy building to be talking about it. I say this as I'm talking about it, so I appreciate the irony there, but we got to take a break every now and then. But I think that's, and actually calling myself out on that, I think that's an important thing. If someone's if you have enough time to tweet all day about this, you probably have too much time and you're not spending enough on that. But it is hard, but it's so exciting what's going on. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of years.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So, Jimbo, Jordan mentioned something extremely poignant in his answer, which was challenges, and he was mentioning that there was it's challenging with regards to building technology that's not really adopted by the masses yet, but trying to change the way that people see the way that the world is evolving. But I'd like to ask you a personal question now, Jimbo, actually, which is a little bit more around how's the past year that you've been working at Fleamint, or 8, 9, 10 months. How's that been? How have you enjoyed the journey? I know there's been a lot of challenges, and I've certainly pushed you outside of your comfort zone. So I'd like to kind of have the final question centered around this. How's Fleamint's ecosystem enriched your life?
Yeah, thanks, James. Look, it's been a blur, hasn't it, the last 8 months? I think we can all agree with that. Yeah, we haven't stopped, have we? It's from the word go. But we're out to do a good thing. For me, it's just all of the when I got into real estate, and as I've moved from the big institutions into those prop tech companies, I wasn't quite getting where I needed to be with it. I wasn't really solving enough problems with that technology. So I think working with you on this business, as we've kind of sort of fleshed out the core platform, started to build out the different verticals, and especially the real estate vertical, and the more and more I can see the different challenges and problems we're going to solve across the sector, and not only in residential market, which has been a bit of a focus today, but super interested what we can do in commercial space, retail, industrial space as well. So it's there's a huge challenge ahead of me. I think what kind of G's me up at the moment is we finally got the right tools in the toolbox to attack this in the right way. Let's say previously with other tech I was working with, we were just kind of like wasn't making the impact that I wanted to. So I feel although it's we're a startup, and I'm sure a lot of people can appreciate the aggressive workload and nature that a startup demands, or at least one that's going to be super successful like Fleamint. But really, at the end of the tunnel, I can actually see the difference this is going to make from an industry point of view, and that's the shining light that I'm really excited to expand into and really make some interesting change in the real estate industry.
Fantastic. No, really appreciate that. And Jordan, you can bring us home. So there's been a few times that we've kind of discussed mass adoption, but how do you feel, on a much larger scale outside of property and technology? Like how are we in Web3 going to achieve mass adoption for the world?
Yeah, sticking to that same theme, accessibility and user experience is ultimately the key to all of this. Like, I'm a tech nerd. I buy gadgets that are almost in prototype form, and I'll deal with those troubles. But and in fact, I owned 3 smartphones before Steve Jobs stepped on stage and changed the world. Apple didn't invent the smartphone; they normalized the technology. They made it accessible, and that sort of moment of that, I guess that's sort of that eureka moment for the industry, I think is still a ways away. But the way that we can get better at it is making more streamlined experiences. And I think that goes back to an important theme that we touched on a lot today, especially in this climate relative to cryptocurrencies, is the more complex you make things to Joe on the street, the average user, the more opportunity there is too for these kinds of massive collapses or even, what can appear to be theft and fraud. So this is where I mean, the key right now is better user experiences. And like I said a couple of times now, focus on the outcomes. What is it doing for people, not on how mystical this technology is. Like, people know incredible technology when they see it, because it's the gradually then suddenly thing. We like, the iPhone debuted in 2007. Smartphone adoption really didn't start to take off till 2010, 2011. So there's even that separation. And I think we're still a ways from that iPhone moment and then the adoption curve taking up. And I think that focus needs to be the same focus Apple had. They saw a consumer electronic class that was ready for disruption. And that was the phone category. And they turned phones from, talkie devices to typey devices that let us get all the information and entertainment we could need anywhere we wanted. And that gave rise to things like Spotify, YouTube, and all of these things that are just, people are going to watch this on their phone. That was a gradual change. And a recommendation to anyone watching, if you haven't seen the documentary General Magic, about the 25, 30 years that went into the development of all the things that made the iPhone, watch it. And it'll give you a sense of its efforts, like the team and the sort of superstar team behind the scenes at Fleamint. It's getting all those people in a room and getting them to do something that works, and then packaging it up, not so it works for those smart people, but so that it works for everybody out there. And so we're going to be hard at work for the next few years, but it's exciting times ahead.
Totally agree. I mean, look, for me personally, it's about weaving Web3 into everybody's lives without them even knowing that Web3 is integrated. That's when we've fully immersed ourselves and kind of achieved the goal. Where when I came up with Jimmy and we were talking about the grander vision, it's about changing the world, and we firmly believe that Fleamint will be changing the world by integrating Web3 into every single kind of business that's out there, that makes it a lot more efficient, makes it there's multiple use cases right now where we're working with gyms, we're working with wines, we're working with recruitment firms, we're working with such a broad spectrum of various different industries, and this is where we're weaving in Web3 in order to allow their process to become more streamlined, more efficient, and more cost effective, and that's something that we're actively achieving right now. So, overall, I'd like to thank you both. Right, it was absolutely amazing discussion. Both of you had some real insightful input, so I thank you both. And to the viewers, I guess, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please, by all means, add your comments in, and our team will be actively responding. So thank you so much for your time today, guys.
Thanks. We're off to build.